Part 179. Divine System of the Strongest Card Supplier in the End Times, Doomsday Strongest Card Supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1781. I don't know where the sense of superiority comes from. Just looking at Fang Fan like this, arrogant and cold. Is it? You think this is what it should be? Then you will be my slave girl from now on. Anyway, you are weaker than me. Fang Fan shrugged, looked around the Iceberg Queen presumptuously, and then said indifferently. Asshole. You humble ants. Do you know what you're talking about? Her Royal Highness is also capable of blasphemy. Your Highness, please allow the brave Nadas to kill him. Boom boom boom. Shocking sounds came from a distance, and a sturdy man came to the Ice Mountain Queen, and immediately began to speak courteously. While speaking, the expression of admiration on his face was beyond words. Obviously, this shock has a lot of admiration for this Iceberg Queen, and it can even be said to be obsessed. That humble to the extreme gesture is vividly displayed. Allow. Take off his head, and this queen will congratulate you. The Iceberg Queen nodded secretly, her facial expression still cold. Obey, Your Majesty the Queen. Boom boom boom. The strong man named Nadas promised excitedly, and then stepped on the ground, feeling waves of shaking. Fang Fan glanced at this strong man. He only had one feeling, that is, this strong man is really extraordinarily mighty. At a glance, he should be more than 3 meters tall, and he stands out from the crowd among these natives, which is particularly conspicuous. Galen. Fang Fan silently waved his hand, then gave Galen an order. Obey my lord. Galen, who was holding a big sword, smiled secretly, and then his body burst out, directly fighting this strong native man named Nadas. The battle scenes were once shocking. Both Galen and this strong man named Nadas can only display the peak combat power of the low-level quasi-sacred realm in the ruins of the gods. Moreover, Galen is fighting for the first time in the ruins of the gods, and many aspects do not fit. And this Nadas has a geographical advantage, and it has a lot of advantages at this moment. Fang Fan narrowed his eyes secretly, thinking about the whole battle situation in his heart, and at this moment, he had some other thoughts and ideas in his mind. In fact, in the current situation, Fang Fan can completely let Nai Yan perform a wave of control battle operation, reduce the enemy's combat power by half, and increase Galen's combat power by 1 time, so that he can definitely crush. But from Fang Fan's point of view, it's still not worth it. Battle control is indeed a magical skill, but it has a cooldown time of 3 days, and it cannot be used casually at any time. This is the principle and the plan. Fang Fan thought to himself, and sharp rays of light flickered in his eyes. Galen, activate the divine skill of the heavenly jailer god's throne. His sin value is very high. Fang Fan silently reminded, and then fixed his eyes on the entire battlefield again. The battle scene on the battlefield at this moment can only be said to be even more terrifying. The 3-meter-tall native Nadas is completely fighting for his life. While attacking frantically, he couldn't help looking at the Ice Queen behind him. Obviously this guy still wants to pretend to be a wave in front of this Iceberg Queen, to show his bravery. Obey my lord. Galen's eyes lit up with a big healthcare in his hand, and then his face became a little excited. He also possesses the 9th rank of a heavenly jailer. Divine System of the Strongest Card Supplier in the End Times, Doomsday Strongest Card Supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1782. Heavenly Court Jailer, 9th rank god, in charge of the Heavenly Court Ancestral Prison, attacking people with high crime values, enjoying a 100% attack power bonus. And can capture sinners and enter the ancestral prison to refine them into spirits. As a heavenly jailer, he is naturally very sensitive to evil. The key point of Galen's Heavenly Jailer God position is that it has a 100% attack power bonus against cultivators with high sin values. Of course, when fighting, you must choose to activate such skills to be sustainable. Divine Skill. Out. Galen snorted coldly, and then white air waves flickered all over his body. As soon as the strong native Nadas approached the white air waves, he screamed and fled. Originally, the native strongman Nadas had a slight advantage in terms of geographical advantages, but after Galen's attack power doubled, he was completely crushed. Fatal Blow. Courage. Judgment. Galen launched a wave of skill attacks first, which gradually opened up the scene, and then he gave another dark shout, and the strength of his whole body was instantly gathered on his body. Bang bang bang. There was a sound of explosions, everyone's eyes were focused here, and the expressions on their faces were extremely shocked. This battle scene is reversed, which is more or less unbelievable, and even all kinds of feelings are surging. Puff. Nadas, a strong indigenous man, spat out a mouthful of reverse blood. His face was full of astonishment and disbelief. No. Impossible, how could? You are obviously not my opponent. What magic method did you use? You are not my opponent. Her Majesty the Queen. I will completely obliterate you. Obliterate. The strong native Nadas stared wide-eyed, then let out roars one after another, and his body trembled unnaturally and urgently. He was ashamed in front of Her Majesty the Queen. How can this work? Her Majesty the Queen doesn't think he is a wimp, does she? Will Her Majesty the Queen ignore him in the future? Nadas, a strong indigenous man, fell into infinite reverie. While talking, his body trembled more and more, and various complicated thoughts were churning in his mind, which made him feel like his mind had collapsed. I fight with you. Damn bastard. I am the strongest warrior under Her Majesty the Queen. My name is Nadas. The complexion of the indigenous strongman Nadas changed intermittently, and while he was talking, the range of changes in his expression became larger and larger. Immediately, holding the giant axe in his hand, he started his endless attack. He wants to show his might with this. I want to use this to win the favor of the Iceberg Queen. It's just that he was too anxious. If you have enough fighting power, then with the blessing of this kind of anger, your results will be further improved. But at this moment, the strong native Nadas is no longer Galen's opponent, but now he has lost his mind, bringing more opportunities to Galen. Everything should be over. Galen murmured to himself, his eyes flickering brightly, his hands were folded in front of him, his footsteps protruded slightly, his thoughts were boiling wildly. Justice for Demacia. Galen snorted coldly, the big sword in his hand suddenly flew into the air, and then drew a golden sword light in the air. The golden sword light descended from the sky, and directly aimed at the Tianling guy of the native strongman Nadas. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Divine System of the Strongest Card Supplier in the End Times, Doomsday Strongest Card Supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1783. At this moment, the strong native Nadas was still charging desperately, wanting to take this opportunity to kill Galen. It's a pity that he has no chance at all at this moment. The road ahead has been completely blocked. Click. The sound of the skull cracking came, and everything gradually settled down. The huge head of the native strong man burst open in the air, and then countless brains burst out along with the blood. The scene once seemed extremely horrified and fearful. Boom! The huge body of Nadas, a native strongman over 3 meters high, crashed to the ground. Those eyes widened ferociously, looking extremely unwilling and angry, and there was even a kind of despair and cry from the heart. Only now it's all over. Nadas, a native strongman, dies. In fact, Even if everyone's combat power is compressed in the low-level quasi-sacred realm, there is still a specific division of strength in the low-level quasi-sacred realm. For example, the combat power of the Holy Realm was suppressed to the low-level quasi-sacred realm, and the existence of the low-level quasi-sacred realm was suppressed by the rules of the relics of the gods. Although both can only exert low-level quasi-sacred the combat power of the Holy Realm, but obviously the former can directly crush the latter, there is no doubt about it. Fang Fan gasped, the corners of his mouth raised silently. You can divide the low-level quasi-jihad power into weak, strong, and extreme. Weak and low-level quasi-sages refer to those who are themselves low-level quasi-sages, or those whose combat power is already very poor. As for the strong and low-level quasi-sages, they can be regarded as those who suppress their cultivation by cultivators in the Holy Realm, or their own combat power is relatively strong, and they are more suitable for fighting, such as the dead native strongmen Nadas and heroes like Galen. Normal combat power is within this category. Besides, Fang Fan's thoughts move slightly. If he is stronger, he will be a top existence, and it can be said that he is a low-level quasi-sage with absolute peak combat power. For example, if Vega casts spells normally, he is a strong low-level quasi-sage, but once the magic bonus effect of supernatural evil power is added, the combat power will directly increase. It is not an exaggeration to say that it has directly skyrocketed to the peak of the low-level quasi-sage. Although these personal guards beside the Queen of the Chu Kingdom in front of me have a lot of low-level quasi-jihad power, most of them are still limited to weak low-level quasi-sages. Fang Fan thought in his heart, and immediately took care of the overall situation again. You actually beheaded the warriors of my Chu Kingdom. You are bound to die. All of you can't escape. You should all be punished. The Queen's guards obey orders. Kill all these humble intruders. The Iceberg Queen glanced around, then snorted coldly, with an extremely indifferent expression on her face. Following her order, thousands of indigenous soldiers behind her rushed over frantically. Fang Fan squinted his eyes and took a look. Among the thousands of indigenous soldiers, more than half were low-level quasi-sacred fighters. There are almost 500 or 600 low-level quasi-sacred combat power. If it were placed in the big world outside, no amount of low-level quasi-sages would be enough to see, but here are the relics of the gods. These natives have a numerical advantage, which is inevitable. The current low-level quasi-sacred combat power under my command is only more than 100. 10 personal legions, 6 heroes, 4 divine pets, Nai Yan and others. As for the 100 members of the Tianhu clan and Chentian clan, they are all below the low-level quasi-sage. Divine system of the strongest card supplier in the end times, Doomsday strongest card supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1784. Fang Fan frowned silently, wondering in his heart. The more than 100 low-level quasi-sages are at a disadvantage in terms of numbers against the more than 500 low-level quasi-sages of the Chu Kingdom, but in Fang Fan's view, they can fight directly. You still have to have the self-confidence you should have, otherwise you will really become a salted fish. After all, the legions under his command are very special. Facing the turbulent native soldiers, Fang Fan naturally couldn't be afraid of it. Low Heavy Machine Gun Corps, Fire Support. Yellow Turban Typing Warlock Legion, add negative status to the opponent. Blood Shuro Legion, stab from the front. Abyss Demon General Legion, launch a surprise attack from the air. The remaining legions outflank the two sides. Galen, Kyle, Jax, block from the front row. Vega, get ready for dark magic, I will launch a group attack later. Daji, remote magic support. Fang Fan snorted secretly, his eyes flickering. Only on such a battlefield can he find the home of his own soul. Deep in the moment, I feel a sense of unobstructedness all over my body. The major legions and heroes are fighting in an orderly manner, and everything is presented on the battlefield in the best form. Boom. Bang bang bang. The continuous sound of cannons came, and the 20 ccm small caliber shells fired from the low heavy machine guns were firing crazily and rapidly at an astonishing speed. In 1 minute, one cannon can even fire dozens of rounds. This is really like a machine gun, starting to shoot directly. After a round of bombardment, the bombing basically achieved full coverage. The enemy's combat power below the low-level quasi-holy realm was wiped out. Some of the low-level quasi-jihad forces in the indigenous army also fell because they were hit between the eyebrows by several shells. Soon, more than half of the thousands of elite native soldiers in front of them were lost, leaving less than 500. The scene was horrifying for a time, and everyone's eyes were focused on it, each with deep emotion. Even though they suffered such casualties suddenly, these native soldiers of the Chu kingdom continued to attack meticulously. Their speed was as fast as ever, and their fighting motivation was the same as at the beginning, which was extremely sufficient. Not to mention anything else, Fang Fan must admire such fighting power and willpower. Fang Fan was sure that their spiritual power was normal, and their souls had never been violated or controlled. In other words, such a fighting posture towards death and lifelessness was all displayed by them themselves. If you look at it this way, the scene can't help but look shocked. This iceberg queen looks rather unusual. It looks as cold and glamorous as an iceberg, but the control over the soldiers under his hands has reached this level. Fang Fan murmured to himself, and couldn't help but fell into a brief thought. Courage is indeed needed on the battlefield, but if you only have courage blindly, you are sending yourself to death. Fang Fan narrowed his eyes silently, put his hands together in front of him, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and his thoughts gradually emptied. From his point of view, the casualties of these Chu kingdom native soldiers will only increase. Fang Fan made a preliminary estimate. With the current lineup of his army, let alone fighting against thousands of Chu kingdom native troops, even if it is against tens of thousands, there may not be opportunities to take advantage of. Ace and ace combined, it will be a fighter in the ace. Divine system of the strongest card supplier in the end times, Doomsday strongest card supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1785. How so? Why are the fighting power of these invaders so strong? Queen Natasha of the Chu kingdom narrowed her eyes, and the astonishment on her face became more and more obvious. While talking, he murmured, and the ignorant expression on his face became more and more. But soon, such ignorance turned into a murderous intent. Anyone who dares to threaten the existence of the Chu kingdom should be wiped out. Erase them all. Fight with me to the end. Queen Natasha of the Chu kingdom gave a coquettish cry, and then rushed into the crowd with a beautiful long sword in her hand. The original queen's gauze skirt on her body was replaced by a bright red armor stomach at some point. At this moment, it is charging forward, and its combat power is soaring crazily. Boom! Kyle stepped forward with the long angel sword in his hand, trying to stop Natasha, the queen of the Chu kingdom. With just one move, the long angel sword in Kyle's hand fell directly, and then his body retreated. If he didn't react fast enough, it was directly obliterated by a sword just now. Such a scene is horrifying. Vulnerable. While fighting, Natasha, the queen of the Chu kingdom, went back to the house with the long sword in her hand, and then said the sentence with contempt, and she knew she was pretending to be extremely aggressive. Arrogance is the only synonym for Queen Natasha of the Chu kingdom. The queen is invincible. The queen is invincible. Follow Her Majesty the Queen to the death. Follow Her Majesty the Queen to the death. Follow Her Royal Highness to the end. Fight to the end. All kinds of ideas are boiling in the mind, everyone's eyes are focused on this, and the explosive power seems to be extremely inflated. The morale that seemed a bit sluggish at first suddenly became extremely high after the exaggeration of Natasha, the queen of the Chu kingdom. With the Queen Natasha of the Chu kingdom as the core of the battle, she rushed over violently. The battle lines established by the major armies under Fang Fan's command even seemed to be crumbling. According to the analysis of this scene, the danger in it can be imagined. If you are not careful, the whole system may collapse. There's something wrong with this iceberg queen. The combat power seems to be beyond the category of low-level quasi-sages, it is stronger than the peak low-level quasi-sages I understand. Fang Fan murmured to himself, and then sharp rays of light flickered in his eyes. I'll fight you. The hero Jax rushed over with a street lamp weapon in his hand, full of arrogance. Jump and chop. A charged attack. Counter storm. The might of a master. The hero Jax directly used all his whole cards. He even used his ultimate move Grandmaster's power. Jax, who is in an explosive state, can completely fight a wave of low-level quasi-sage powerhouses in a short period of time. Boom. Clang. Queen Natasha of the Chu Kingdom began to exert strength, and then she slashed out with a sword, and the surging sword light was frantically gathering. Gives people a sense of arrogance from the heart. Ah! The hero Jax's hands suddenly trembled, and then the meridians on his arms were broken bit by bit. Jax let out a howl, but held on tenaciously. Get out! Jax! Fang Fan's complexion changed suddenly, and then he rushed over directly, and at the same time reminded loudly. This iceberg queen has a problem. Kyle was defeated by one move before, but Kyle's body followed and rushed in other directions, saving his life. But Jax. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Divine System of the Strongest Card Supplier in the End Times, Doomsday Strongest Card Supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1786. Fang Fan took a deep breath, and his face couldn't help showing a serious look. Under his gaze, the Ice Queen's longsword had already slashed directly towards Jax's neck. And Jax's hands were still trembling at the moment, obviously powerless to resist. Once the Iceberg Queen's longsword falls, everything will be a foregone conclusion. Fang Fan clenched his fists with both hands, and in his mind, he was filled with emotions. Boom! When the Iceberg Queen's longsword fell, there was a sudden crash sound. A golden protective cover suddenly appeared beside the hero Jax. When the Ice Queen's longsword fell, it slashed on the protective cover without leaving any mark. Holy Asylum! At this moment, the hero Kyle in the distance suddenly turned pale. It was she who used a wave of innate skills Holy Asylum just now to barely save Jax's life. Otherwise, the sharp attack just now would directly tear Jax apart. Jax, evacuate quickly. Fang Fan heaved a sigh of relief, and then gave Jax another order, and immediately rushed forward. My lord! Let me go. You go, too dangerous. When Galen saw Fang Fan galloping over, he couldn't help showing a nervous look on his face. Natasha, the queen of the Chu Kingdom, is obviously not easy to deal with. The two heroes who were able to exert strong low-level quasi-sage or even the ultimate low-level quasi-jihad were defeated, which can already explain a lot of things. In such an uncertain situation, if you go hastily, it is very likely that you will die on your own. No. You are not this woman's opponent. Don't worry, I will let Nai Yan help me. At critical moments, I can still extract the power from the servant of the Rage God. With the thought, Fang Fan looked around. Entering the ruins of the gods this time, only Huang Gan and Huang Shi did not enter the top 10 servant gods of the desolate gods. The remaining 8 servant gods, namely the 4 heroes and the 4 god pets, were all around. If the situation gets out of hand, Fang Fan can completely mobilize their strength. Their current combat power is limited to the low-level quasi-sacred realm due to the restrictions of the rules of the gods' ruins. But if the 8 low-level quasi-holy warriors gather together, the combat power will be directly raised to the middle-level quasi-holy realm. Coupled with the support of Nai Yan's magical skill battle control, the situation at that time will definitely be completely reversed. Fang Fan took a deep breath, put his hands together in front of him, and the corners of his mouth raised silently. Facing this iceberg queen, he suddenly became interested. He really wanted to see how far this iceberg queen could go. At this moment, Natasha, queen of the Chu kingdom, frowned, looking at the long sword in her hand, looking inexplicably in a daze. Just now, she thought that the sword that would definitely kill Jax didn't work. Not only did he fail to make meritorious deeds, he didn't even leave even the slightest mark on Jax's body. Thinking of this, Queen Natasha's eyes became more and more confused. Why was the shield so strong just now? It has already exceeded the limit of what she can break through. Just as she was thinking, another Qiangnian flew over from afar. Queen Natasha raised her beautiful eyes silently, and a sneer appeared on her face. From her point of view, Fang Fan's fight is not even as good as those two just now. Those two just now didn't kill with a single blow, but this one in front of them definitely can. Divine System of the Strongest Card Supplier in the End Times, Doomsday Strongest Card Supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1787. Queen Natasha thought in her heart, and then her eyes became sharper. She wanted to prove her strength in this way, so as to frighten the soldiers under her command. Queen Natasha's sword gradually approached. With a chilling killing intent. Sure enough, it's not an ordinary low-level quasi-holy realm, and its combat power even far exceeds the peak low-level quasi-holy war power. Interesting, really interesting. Fang Fan murmured to himself, and while talking, there were flashes of light in his eyes. He didn't use Nai Yan's God War skills, nor did he choose to mobilize the power of Kerjax and other wild gods. Because this does not form the suppression of combat power. The rage of the rage god. Fang Fan snorted coldly, and immediately the surrounding fireworks were rushing crazily, carrying a force that could make one completely obliterated and disappeared. It seems to be able to overwhelm everything in front of me. The eyes of Queen Natasha of the Chu kingdom, who was originally full of confidence, gradually changed, and all kinds of thoughts also rushed in her mind. The frantic gathering of fireworks gives people a sense of panic from the heart. No. It's impossible. In this world, how can someone have such powerful power? This will be envied by the true God. While Queen Natasha was talking, her complexion gradually became tangled, even trembling. While speaking, her head shook unnaturally from side to side, her brows began to frown unnaturally, and her eyes also looked a little unnatural. It's all a blindfold. Yes. It must be a blindfold. Queen Natasha took a deep breath, and then used this method to hypnotize herself. Now she can only think in this way, all this is beyond her imagination. She thinks that she already possesses the peak and strongest power. But now, the counterexample was right in front of her eyes, and her first reaction was to deny it. All falsehood will be reduced to nothingness. The blindfold will eventually be completely destroyed. Queen Natasha was firm in her belief, and immediately rushed over. Her speed was getting faster and faster, her eyes became sharper, and her body trembled more and more. The sword is getting closer to Fang Fan. The corners of Fang Fan's mouth rose silently, and suddenly he had some evil intentions of wanting to play tricks on the iceberg queen. When the wrath of the rage god was unleashed, Fang Fan completely had the leverage to negotiate. I didn't expect rage of the rage god to be applicable in the ruins of the gods. Under normal circumstances, the ultimate combat power in the ruins of the gods is the ultimate low-level quasi-sacred combat power. I am in this world, and my normal combat power can barely reach the strong and low-level quasi-sacred realm. But looking at it now, I briefly possess the ultimate quasi-jihad power. Rage of the Rage God can increase my combat power by 3 levels within 10 minutes. It's already being implemented. In other words, within these 10 minutes, I am almost invincible. Fang Fan nodded silently as he spoke. This feeling of opening and hanging is simply not too cool. If it is placed outside, a supreme quasi-sage is the kind that will be directly killed in minutes. But in the ruins of the gods, when everyone can only have the combat power of a low-level quasi-sage at most, it is surprising enough that a mid-level quasi-sage suddenly appeared, and a top quasi-sage appeared. It is a miracle among miracles. Divine System of the Strongest Card Supplier in the End Times, Doomsday Strongest Card Supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1788. When Queen Natasha's close-fitting longsword stabbed towards her, Fang Fan stretched out his right hand calmly, and then stretched out 2 fingers again to clamp the tip of the longsword. Then Fang Fan yawned subconsciously, with a relaxed and indifferent look on his face. How could this be? My sword. Queen Natasha blushed for a while, and wanted to push the longsword in her hand, but it was doomed to be useless now. His Royal Highness is really cooperative. Looking at this, are you reluctant to kill me? Or, surrender to my charm and fall in love with me completely? Fang Fan said frivolously, then turned around with a smile, and put his arms around the delicate waist of Queen Natasha of the Chiyu Kingdom. Not to mention anything else, it feels really good. Queen Natasha's body trembled slightly, her face flushed, and her unbelievable eyes gradually turned into anger and murderous intent. Asshole! I kill you! Queen Natasha turned around and stabbed Fang Fan's chest with a long sword. It's just that no matter how she stabs, she can't pierce Fang Fan's defense. What kind of disturbance does the middle-level quasi-sage want to cause in front of the top quasi-sage? It's almost impossible. Fang Fan chuckled, and the smile on his face suddenly increased. Interesting, really fun. Queen. Her Majesty the Queen. Quick. Rescue Her Majesty the Queen. Her Royal Highness has been held hostage by this shameless bastard. Rescue Her Royal Highness at all costs. The remaining hundreds of low-ranking quasi-holy level guards in the Queen's personal guard suddenly rushed over with bared teeth and claws, appearing excited. Wait. Stop your steps. Your Queen is deliberately reluctant to kill me, don't you see it? Hey, you idiots really don't have any emotional intelligence at all. Romantic. Do you know what romance is? Your Highness is so powerful, don't you know? If she really wants to kill me, can I take her sword with 2 fingers? Also, if she really wanted to kill me just now, why do you think the sword that stabbed me in the chest couldn't penetrate an inch? As Fang Fan spoke, his eyes gradually looked forward, and the smiles on the corners of his mouth silently increased. Evil taste, that's how it most likely happened. The Queen's personal guard, who were originally excited, suddenly fell into a stagnation at this moment. They looked at each other, and from each other's eyes, they could see confusion and at a loss. What they want to express is this all true? No. Anyway, I don't believe it. Her Royal Highness is my goddess, she can't fall in love with other men. Yes. Even if you want to love, you must fall in love with the warriors of our Chiyu Kingdom. These foreign invaders, they are not worthy at all. But Her Highness the Queen has not denied it until now, and more importantly, Her Highness really did not kill him. That's right, according to Her Majesty's temperament, a man like this is so rude, he has already been cut in half with a sword, but now this man is still alive and kicking, Her Majesty will not really have secretly agreed. Is, really like this? Then this man will be the prince of our Chu kingdom in the future, then shall we continue to kill? Her Majesty's peace of mind has been captured, my youth, has been terminated. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Divine system of the strongest card supplier in the end times, Doomsday strongest card supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1789. There were angry voices of conversation coming from the surroundings. The hundreds of low-level quasi-sacred elite guards of the Queen's Guard looked at each other at this moment, appearing terrified. At the same time, there are all kinds of jealousy, resentment, regret and even sadness. Her Royal Highness is the supreme goddess in their hearts. If they can get the Queen's first relative Fangzi, for these warriors of the Qiyu kingdom, they will die without regret. In the past, they all gradually survived by relying on such illusions, but now, the illusions are shattered, and everything is coming to an end. They opened their mouths, but they could only utter a sound of powerless indignation. Such a feeling, even makes them feel haggard and heartbroken. Can't wait to explode. You bastard. Queen Natasha's delicate body trembled suddenly, her beautiful eyes were full of resentment and anger. How can this bastard talk nonsense? What made her even more angry and ashamed was that these personal guards of her personal guard actually believed the words of this shameless bastard. Queen Natasha suddenly began to struggle in Fang Fan's arms, and then she turned her gaze to the guards of the Queen's personal guard, wanting to order them to kill Fang Fan. You all give me orders. Queen Natasha had just finished speaking these words when her lips were suddenly sealed. Fang Fan is a very dedicated actor. He has always advocated that acting should be performed in full, so that it will be more realistic and real. Especially in the current situation, the form is more urgent. The drama is bigger than the sky. Fang Fan lowered his head solemnly, and immediately made a great sacrifice, pointed his lips at Queen Natasha's lips. When the four warm lips touched, there was an inexplicably sweet feeling. Fang Fan frowned subconsciously, and then stared at Queen Natasha with wide eyes. The meaning in his eyes was, "Did you put honey on your mouth? It's quite sweet, and the taste is not bad, with a sense of fragrance." Fang Fan thought about it for a while, and then subconsciously licked it. The scene once seemed extraordinarily explosive. Everyone's eyes were focused on this, and they were completely dumbfounded. This scene, exploded. Asshole! Asshole! Tianhumeyer, who was standing by the side, suddenly bit her red lips tightly, her face full of grievances. I don't know how many times a beautiful woman like me has flirted with you by your side, and you ignored it, but now I come here to forcefully kiss the Queen. Is this the so-called domestic flowers are not as fragrant as wildflowers? Or, my beauty is really not as good as that Queen Natasha? Tianhumeyer thought about it in her heart, then subconsciously puffed her chest out, looked around, and thought it was okay. Does this guy like this kind of title? His Royal Highness? Do you like this kind of taste? Then I am still the saint of the Tianhu clan. Tianhumeyer stomped her feet, and while talking, the aggrieved expression on her face became more and more. But in an instant, she suddenly blushed. I was thinking about something just now. How can I have those messy thoughts? Which woman he likes is his business, it has nothing to do with me. Yes. That's it. It has nothing to do with me. While Tianhumeyer was talking, she felt her complexion burn for no reason, and she gasped heavily after imagining it. Divine system of the strongest card supplier in the end times, Doomsday strongest card supplier. Author, Shu Yu. Chapter 1790. Of course, to put it bluntly, there is no silver 300 taels here. If you really don't feel anything, why think so much? One kiss and minutes passed. Queen Natasha stared forward blankly, her hands were tightly grasping Fang Fan's sleeves, she looked very ignorant. As for the guards of the Queen's personal guards around, although they were extremely distressed, they accepted this fact helplessly. His Royal Highness really wants to leave us. Ah, I can't take such a blow. My God. How can it be like this? Hey, Her Royal Highness and that guy, both, are already like that. There may have been a little bit of hesitation before, but now all the hesitation is gone, no more, it's completely solid. There was a burst of shouting, and everyone couldn't help sighing. All kinds of feelings become especially real from the heart. Today is destined to be a heartbreaking moment. Are you okay? Fang Fan saw that Queen Natasha in his arms suddenly remained motionless, and then he stretched out his hand and shook it in front of her eyes. He was really impulsive just now. In order to act, I made a huge sacrifice. Fang Fan wanted to praise his behavior for the spirit of dedicating himself to art. It's just that now that the acting is over, this iceberg queen seems to be a little different. I'm fine. From now on, you will be my husband. You will be the only prince of Shu Kingdom. You will become the main palace in my harem. Unless you commit the great crime of treason in the future, no one will be able to shake your position as the main palace. Even if this queen wants to continue to choose faces in the future, they can only submit to you. Queen Natasha suddenly said with a serious face. Fang Fan looked at her blankly, feeling inexplicably shown off. This is getting more and more interesting. The harem is the main palace. The only prince. Fang Fan muttered a few words, then his face turned completely dark. Co-author, do you still want to marry me back? It is enough to dedicate oneself to art to this extent. From Fang Fan's point of view, it seems a bit too much to dedicate oneself to art. I'm the man you'll never have. You've been thinking about it in a mess. Fang Fan directly put Queen Natasha down, and then said with disgust. He doesn't want to show mercy. Fang Fan's disgusting tone and words were completely revealed, and Queen Natasha was stunned. She couldn't imagine why a man would accept such an invitation. Except for Queen Natasha, those personal guards of the Queen's personal guard were filled with righteous indignation. This bastard, what did he just say? Is he despising the great Queen? Damn it! How could this man be so shameless? After taking away Her Royal Highness's true and pure first time, he actually wants to turn his face and deny anyone. Ah! This is a blasphemy against our entire Chiyu kingdom. Even if our Chiyu kingdom is all killed in battle, we will definitely seek justice for Her Highness the Queen. Gather the warriors of the Chu kingdom. Let us use the iron-blooded longsword to protect Her Majesty the Queen. Call! Call! The guards of the Queen's guard shouted, and then there was a scene of uproar. More and more natives of the Chu kingdom gathered here, and the momentum was extraordinarily large.